Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Robbie. This is the Unhinged Father Podcast. Hope everyone's having a fantastic week. Welcome into season 2 of the podcast. We're going to go ahead and jump right in. Now, I've got a trigger warning for this episode. I don't usually give trigger warnings. I usually don't give a shit about trigger warnings, but for this episode in particular, I figured that I would give one just because some of the topics that I'm going to be touching on can be extremely sensitive to quite a few people. And here it goes. Here's the trigger warning. Today, we're going to be mentioning and talking about guns, and we're going to be talking about school shootings as well. These are both very heavy, controversial, polarizing topics. I know that, but you'll see as we go through this podcast episode why I'm talking about them. And I do think that it's extremely important to talk about them. Sometimes I feel like we let a lot of things get in the way of us having deep conversation about it, and I'm not going to let that happen. So I'm just letting y'all know. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'll be talking about these things. It might be uncomfortable. You may not like it, but I think that it's an important conversation to have. So if you're able to kind of get past that, definitely give this episode a listen. And on top of the trigger warning, I just wanted to give my deepest sympathy and thoughts, prayers, whatever you want to say to any parent that has ever experienced a school shooting. I haven't. I've never been in that situation. I can only imagine what it feels like to have lost a child or have had a child who's been in that traumatic situation. And I just want to make sure that I'm stating on the front end that everything that I'm discussing here is from the understanding that I've never experienced that and I don't know what it's truly like. I'm not trying to ever compare myself to that. But I do think that it is a good thing for us to talk about. We need to have conversations around this because it is a problem. We've seen too much of it to put our heads in the sand anymore. So you might be sitting there and asking yourself, Robbie, why the fuck do you want to talk about guns and school shootings? That sounds absolutely terrible. And you're right. It does sound terrible. But my family has experienced some events this week, and I'm not going to go super far into the details on this, but give you guys a high level overview. First off, everyone's fine. Nothing happened. It's just more so the circumstances around this event that make it really scary. Something that was absolutely terrifying for me and my family. So, as some of you may know, my eldest son just started going to kindergarten, just moved schools. He's in a public school now, and he's been there for a couple of weeks. And things have been going pretty good besides the normal transitional shit that he goes through, comes home, he's really tired, a little cranky. Everything's been going pretty well. He's got new friends. He really enjoys it. He likes going to school and learning and playing with his friends. So it's been awesome. We got a weird email from the principal a few days back, and it was basically saying like, hey, we know that there's a high profile social media user who's in the parent community who's been posting inappropriate things. We're taking measures to essentially address that. And so me as a curious and snooping parent decided to message a few people that I know who are already at the school and kind of got the lowdown. And they let me know that there was this parent who is not able to see her kids. She's got a restraining order, and she came to the school. They called the cops on her, and she basically threatened them and said, y'all make you all pay for this. Fast forward next day, she's live streaming shit on social media, tagging the school in it. And there's a bunch of just like shit going on. I'm not going to dive into every little thing that happened, but the one that was extremely concerning to us was her live streaming at a gun range, shooting at targets, commenting on how she hit the head and how she hit the side. She then tagged the school in the post that she's at the gun range shooting, and she was singing All the Pumped Up Kids, which is a song about school shootings. Now, in my mind, that's just like, fuck this shit. This lady needs to be brought in right now because we don't fuck around with this. If you're wondering why that post was so triggering, it's not necessarily her directly threatening it, but you could read between the fucking lines. You don't go to a gun range, shoot shit, tag a school that you're already threatening people at, and then sing a song that's about school shootings, telling kids to run for their lives. My blood pressure is going up just by repeating this stuff right now. And it's been a while. I've had time to digest it, and it still just puts me on edge. That's the situation. There's been more live streaming since then. The police have been involved. There's been more messages coming out. Like everyone's knows what's going on. I've been in communication with other parents. They've had the school on tighter lockdown, really trying to make sure that the kids don't sense anything wrong. But at first it was, parents who were in the know showed up, picked up their kids early, were pulling them out of class. Certain kids were like scared because they're like, well, why am I not getting picked up early? How come other people are getting picked up early? And it was a giant clusterfuck. And the school did the best that they possibly could. The police did the best they could. Some parents were getting pissed off at them, but like they were in a tough situation. Ultimately, it's this fucking crazy ass lady's fault that all of this happened. But everyone's taking the appropriate measures, and my child is safe. Our family's safe. Everything's okay. This is just the situation that happened. And these are like the initial thoughts that went through my head. And that's what I wanted to talk about, was just that surge of adrenaline and having these flashbacks of all of these videos that I've seen over the years of, I don't have to mention all of them, but there have been shootings with children, high school, colleges. This is a rampant problem that we have in the United States. Not that it happens every single day, but usually when it does, it's just so terrible that it's on front page news and everyone's talking about it. I got extremely angry when I saw all this, and I went into an extremely protective mode. I wanted to go, personally, I wanted to get like an angry mob together and like rally them all together and just fucking take care of the problem. But I know that we live in a civilized society and you can't do that. So I was just gathering as much information as I could to make the most informed decision that I could. But it was scary. I know that the anger was at the top of it because that's the easiest emotion for me to pull on. Like, it's easy for me to feel that anger, to dive into it, and then not feel that underlying emotion of just absolute terror and fear that I could lose my child, and that not even that I could just lose my child, but like the fear and anxiety that could be in their mind if they were in that situation and dad wasn't there to fucking protect them. Like I said, it was terrifying. It was hard. We're already going through a lot of transitions as a family, and this was just something that we weren't anticipating happening. And it really brought all of this kind of like to the top of my mind because, like I said, we've seen all of this happen before. And it's not like I'm ignorant to the fact that this could happen. And I would be lying if I said that it has never crossed my mind that this type of thing could happen at a school. And like I said, nothing happened. There was no school shooting. I'm not insinuating that. But just that potential, that threat was there. Anyways, this brought everything back to the forefront. It's something that now I'm going to be thinking about a lot more, and I'm going to have it on my mind a lot more, and ensuring that my kids' school is really taking safety as a top priority. And it really does seem like this lady had some mental health issues. She's going through some shit, and it almost like seems like she was like relishing in the social media attention. Like she did this shit. People were trying to engage with her, and she was just like, oh, whatever, like blah, blah, blah. Like it was, it's stupid. It was dumb. It was like that film of safety you feel like you have when you're behind a computer, when you're at home, when you're a keyboard warrior. Kind of like what I'm doing right now, except I'm not as crazy as that. But yeah, she was doing all of this. It seems like she liked the attention. She was trying to get more. It's almost like she was like pushing the boundaries, and liked that she had everyone freaked the fuck out. And so a lot of parents, some parents, not everyone, were kind of saying like, oh, are we overblowing this situation? Is this just being blown out of proportion? And when it comes to what I think is that, yeah, everything can be overblown until it's not, right? I don't want to be that person that just says, oh, it's overblown, and not pay attention to it, and then not do anything about it and have it end in tragedy. I'm not willing to take that risk with my kids or your kids or anyone's kids. I don't think that that's a risk that we should be taking. So yeah, if something's amiss, or you think that something's wrong, or you just are worried about something, I would always err on the side of caution, right? I'd rather offend someone or blow something out of proportion to a certain extent than just put my head in the sand and be ignorant to the fact that something could happen, right? Because if something does happen, you'll never fucking forgive yourself. And that's what you always hear. I feel like it's a common theme every time you hear about some sort of school shooting that actually comes to fruition is that, oh, there were signs, they were on a list, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, what the fuck did you do about it? Why didn't you stop that from happening? Anyways, that's enough about the situation that we had happen that brought up this topic. I wanted to make sure that I set the stage where these emotions came from, why this topic is at the top of my mind, and then kind of move forward past the specifics of this one into broader ideological conversation. And I wanted to start this section by stating that I am someone who grew up around guns. Not like we had guns on every wall in the house or, like a plaque with an AR-15, didn't say the Pledge of Allegiance to an AK-47 or something like that. But my family, we went to the desert, we rode motorcycles, we'd go out into the desert, and shoot guns at targets back in the hills and stuff like that. So I was familiar with guns. My dad raised us all up to know proper gun safety, etiquette, making sure that we respected the weapon and knew that it was a dangerous thing that we were utilizing, and to always treat it with respect and to take safety to the highest level. So I think that we were raised with like a very healthy relationships with guns. I mean, if you could say that there's a healthy relationships with guns, like we knew that they existed, we knew how to use them, we knew how to safely utilize them, but it wasn't like an everyday thing that we had. And I just say that to set the stage because I know that guns in general are a very polarizing topic and a huge political issue. And I don't want to get into the political minutia of this conversation. And I think that the politics and the polarization of this topic actually gets in the way of having true and open discussion regarding anything that has to do with guns. Anytime that you see that there's like a school shooting or a mass shooting or any of that shit, all you hear about, the first thing that comes out is fucking politics. It's just always get rid of guns this or Second Amendment this, or it doesn't matter. It's all fucking noise to me now. I can't stand when the politics of any situation get in the way of having like a true philosophical, ideological, moralistic conversation about what's best for society. Fuck your party lines. I don't give a shit about that. All I care about is people and the fucking kids and like, how can we make the best society? I don't give a shit if it's a Democratic idea or a Republican idea, a Green Party idea. All of those things can produce new and good ideas. It's just we have to get out of our own heads to actually make the change. And anytime you talk about a school shooting or something like this or threats, it's always going to come back to guns. Guns are the main issue when it comes to these things. Not always in terms of like reality, but in terms of like the political aspect, it's always going to come back to the guns. And so this is one of the ideas that has been spinning around in my head, because some people want to get rid of guns completely. Some people want to have, guns in every person's pocket around the United States. I'm probably somewhere in the middle, like most things here. But I have thought about, say we had a Pandora's box of guns and we were able to put back all of the guns back into Pandora's box and get rid of guns completely. Would you do that? Would I be willing to do that for the safety of my kids? And it's a tough question to answer, because I know that there's a lot of benefit to, having these tools, weapons, whatever you might say. And it's hard to actually conceptualize it, because if you talk about putting everything back into Pandora's box, you're not taking the aspects of reality into consideration here. When it comes to things like war, which is going to happen. I'm not saying that war is a good thing, but there's going to be war. As long as people are on this earth, they're going to find a way to hurt each other. Until we find that next evolution within our species, unfortunately, there's always just going to be shitty people. So my problem with trying to put everything back into Pandora's box is that I don't think that it's realistic. And it almost pushes me away from even having those thoughts, because why would we try to put everything back into Pandora's box? I feel like if you try to do that, it's only going to be a certain amount of people that put stuff back into this box, and then you're essentially leaving yourself defenseless. I have that same thought when it comes to things like nuclear war and like nukes, right? I wish that there were a time that we could put everything back into that box, that nukes were never invented, that it wasn't an issue, but it is an issue. We're in the real world. And if we just try to say like, okay, well, we're going to be the ones who get rid of this, that doesn't mean that everyone else is going to stop doing that, right? If we say, hey, we're going to give up all of our guns to make things more safe, that doesn't mean that everyone else is going to give up their guns. There's still going to be shit out there. And that's why having this as like the main point in the conversation, I feel like is blinding everyone to the real conversation that needs to happen. This is like the red herring, right? This is the thing that everyone is focused on. But I think that there are deeper issues that need to be addressed on top of some of the things when it comes to gun laws, gun regulations, gun rights. Again, it's the politics, the politicians, and this just absolute ridiculous mentality that you need to toe everything that your fucking party puts out there, that you need to toe that line and just push it forward. Nah, it's horseshit. And part of the problem is also the fact that we don't necessarily trust the government. A lot of these things, like when we talk about like laws, regulations, you have the hope that your government is going to do these things in good faith, that they're going to take whatever laws that they implement and just utilize them in the way that they say that they're going to. But unfortunately, as we already know, is that when laws are created and precedent is created, the government will find ways to utilize that in different areas of people's lives, and they will utilize it to their benefit. And that's one of the things that people are fearful of. That's why they don't necessarily want these additional laws or regulations, because they could just see that slippery slope that it's going to go down, and it may lead to a place that we don't necessarily want to go. And that's like a bigger conversation in terms of politics, restrictions, background checks, mental health checks. I'm actually in favor of common sense regulation and laws when it comes to firearms. They are dangerous. They can be used for bad. They can be used for good. They can be used for bad. There are a lot of other things like tools, similar to driving a car. Like I think we give licenses too easily, in all honesty. I've seen some really shitty drivers. Speaking about dangerous around the school, some of these parents drive like they're fucking race car drivers. And it makes me so upset, because the cars are such a dangerous tool, weapon, whatever you want to call it. A car can be synonymous with a gun. It's got benefit, it's got uses, but it also can be extremely dangerous, and it can be used as a weapon. I think that people should have to pass a lot of tests in order to get a driver's license. And I think that there should be continuing, I don't necessarily know if education's the right word, but there should be regulations and laws in place to ensure that people aren't taking advantage of the fact that they have the right to drive that vehicle. It's a privilege to drive a vehicle. It's a privilege to own a gun. It's a privilege to do these things. And then if you do anything that puts others at risk, you should be losing that privilege. Now, I know that, like I said, I'm not sitting here saying like I want the government to regulate everything in our lives, but there's certain aspects that I think that the government's there for, and they do need to ensure the safety of the public, ensure the safety of other people, while also allowing civil liberties, freedom, all that good stuff that makes us Americans. And that's where it gets muddied, right? And I don't have the answers to that part. How do you ensure that you're allowing for these civil liberties and these freedoms, but also ensuring that the people that you're in charge of governing are being kept safe, and that those people that would take advantage are being punished and losing their rights and their privileges? So I don't have all of the ideas in the world, right? Maybe, background checks, mental health screening, shit like that. But the big question is like, okay, well, who does that? Who decides what's healthy enough to have that? Is it the government that's making these determinations? And that's where we as a society are going to have to come to some sort of realization that we do give a certain amount of power to the government. We are going to have to acquiesce some things, but it's difficult because we've seen the government take advantage of that in the past. So I don't have the answers for this. I'm just rambling now. So I'm going to go ahead and get off this part because I'm not a politician. I don't have the answers, but I do think that these are good conversations that we should be having in order to come up with not necessarily the perfect system, but the best possible system that we can. And that kind of leads me into the next topic that I wanted to discuss, was just like keeping our kids safe. I know that I will do anything to keep my kids safe. That is of the utmost importance to me, is to ensure their safety, their happiness, and their ability to continue on with life and to enjoy life to the fullest. But obviously we can't control everything. And that's hard for me because I am a control freak. I used to think I was easygoing, and then I became a parent and I realized, nope, I am absolutely not easygoing. I am a control freak. I need to be in control of stuff. I like to control environments, situations. It's just in my protective nature. That being said, I also understand that I need to allow my kids the ability to live life, and I can't wrap them in plastic wrap and plastic bubble and send them out into the world. That's not a life to live as well. And so part that I struggle with, and that I think that we might struggle with when it comes to determining how to keep schools as safe as possible to deal with these problems of threats of school shootings or school violence or anything like that, is where is the line between safety and living life? Where are you willing to take it, right? Is it having armed guards at the school? Is it having a police officer posted there? Is it having metal detectors in the school? Is it having 25-foot tall walls surrounding the school? Is it having, machine gun towers surrounding it with barbed wire all around the school? Drones flying around? Like, where do you draw this line when it comes to keeping your kids safe? And I think that the answer is different for every parent. And I think it's different for every person. But I do think that it's a conversation that's worth having. I think that there's common sense things that can be done in order to provide safety to children. And it would be very nice to be able to say, like, well, I wish that society wasn't like this, that we didn't have to have these conversations. I'm sticking my hand up. If you can't see, I'm right there with you. I really wish that society wasn't this shitty and that we didn't have to have these conversations. But unfortunately it is. And these are conversations we need to have. And that's kind of what I was talking about at the beginning, is that if we allow that fear and the uncomfortableness of these conversations to get in the way of having real open discourse about it and coming to the best possible conclusion that we can, then we're not doing anything. We're just sticking our head in the sands. I understand that these topics can be difficult to speak about. And I get it. It's not comfortable for me. This past week was not comfortable. I don't like having these thoughts about this shit. It's not my favorite thing to come on here on the podcast and talk about something that I know is probably going to piss people off or make them feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, I know that this is something that we need to talk about. It's something that we have to have these conversations on. And if we don't, it's just going to continue to fucking happen. And I know you could say that it's never going to happen to me. It's never going to happen in my school. Statistically, this is not something that I need to worry about. I thought that too. We live in a nice neighborhood. The school that my son goes to is one of the better public schools in the area. It's a nice school. That didn't stop this unhinged person from making these type of threats. It can happen anywhere. And if you just put your head in the sand, that means that you want to remain ignorant to this fact until it happens to you. And that's, you can do that if you want to. I'm choosing not to. I'd rather talk about it and see what we can do as parents, as people, as a society to make things better. We've seen too much already to not be fearful, to not know that this type of shit can happen. And so we need to start making changes. We need to start having conversations. We need to get rid of the polarities between the two political sides. And we need to come up with some common ground, not just for ourselves, but for our kids, for the future, for our society, for everyone. I don't give a shit if you're going to vote for Donald Trump. I don't give a shit if you're going to vote for Kamala Harris. I don't give a shit if you're going to fucking just write in, RFK Jr.'s name on the ballot. I don't care about all that stuff. What I care about is having the real conversations about these things and then trying to implement changes that are going to be best for society. Not because you're a Republican, not because you're a Democrat, not because you're a communist, not because you're a social democrat. I don't care about any of that stuff. All I care about is having the conversation and then coming up with the best possible solution. We owe our kids better than sitting around talking shit about the other side and not interacting with someone else just because they think differently than us. We owe them better. We owe ourselves better. And I'm really tired of all of the polarization, the galvanization of people in society. I see it all the time. It's in my neighborhood. Someone's got a Trump sign. Someone's got a Harris sign. They don't interact. People are afraid to talk about their true beliefs because they're not sure if that other person they're with is going to agree with them, or if they're going to get mad at them, or if they're going to fucking bitch and moan at them, trying to cancel them. I'm really tired of seeing all of that stuff. It's okay to have different opinions. It's okay to have different ways of thinking. What's not okay is to completely tear other people down just because they have a difference of opinion to you. I want friends who think differently than me. I want family members who think differently than me. I want to fight with them. I want to have open discussion with them. And then I want to sit down and have a fucking beer with them afterwards because I love them. I like them. Their family, their friends. Shit, they could just people that I've met on the street, and I don't wish any ill on them as long as they don't wish any ill on me. We need to get back to the part where we can get along with people who think differently than us. But I don't have all the answers, unfortunately. I wish that I did. I wish that I could just be elected, supreme leader, have all the answers, take care of everything, keep everyone safe. But that's not going to happen. And I don't have all the answers. And this is a subject that I want to get feedback on. I want to hear what other people think, if they have ideas on this, if they want to talk about it, if they've been in this situation before, if they've, God forbid, if they've actually had family or children or anyone who's been in a school shooting or been a victim of school shooting. I want to hear about it. Send me a DM, email me, click the little send message button at the end of the description of this episode. It'll send a message right to me, but I think this is something that we should be having a discussion on. I don't have the answers. I'd love to hear your ideas and your thoughts on this. But yeah, that's all I've got. It's been one hell of a week. It's been an interesting week. And this is the first time that we've really had to deal with something like this with our kids. Like I said, my heart goes out to anyone who's ever had an actual interaction with like school shooting or something like that, violence at school. My heart goes out to you. We didn't have that. This may be potentially be blown out of proportion, or maybe we blew it just out of proportion before something serious could happen. We'll never know, and I'm glad that we'll never know. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Unhinged Father. I hope that you all either enjoyed it, found it intriguing, or just think that this is a conversation that we should be having. If you haven't already and you enjoy this content, go give me a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasting needs met. Give me a follow on Instagram, Facebook, any of those other social medias that I'm on as well. And yeah, if you have any feedback for the podcast, or you have any recommendations for future episodes, any topics that you want me to discuss in the future, you can send me a DM, email me, or like I said, at the end of this episode description, there's a little button that says message me. Shoot me a message. It'll actually send a text message to me with any topics that you'd like to discuss in the future. And then also on top of that, I'm going to start having guests on the podcast. So if you're someone who has something that they want to talk about, maybe you have a specific topic that you're passionate about, you'd like to have a conversation with me about it on the podcast, let me know. Same ways, DM. Don't do the text message thing at the end of the episode because it doesn't give me your information. But DM, email, let me know if you'd like to be on the podcast. But other than that, I really appreciate all of you being here. I hope that everyone stays safe and has a great weekend. And as always, be good, try hard, do your best.